The snow fell thick and silent, swallowing sound and light alike. The world around her was nothing but white and wind, a wilderness that cared little for human struggle. Her breath came out in short, uneven gasps, each one frosting in the air before her lips. She had been walking for hours, though she could no longer feel her legs. The storm had turned the mountain trail into a graveyard of lost paths, and she had no sense of direction left, only the will to keep moving, though her body begged her to stop. Somewhere deep inside, a faint hope whispered that someone might find her before the cold did. The woman's cloak, once a deep brown wool, was now heavy with ice. Beneath it, her dress was torn at the seams, and her fingers, bare and blue, shook as she clutched the edge of her shawl tighter. Her mind blurred in and out, memories flickering like dying lanterns. She saw the faces of those who left her behind, the wagon, the shouting, the gunshot in the distance, then nothing but the endless white. It was supposed to have been a simple journey westward, a promise of a new start. Instead, she had been betrayed and left to die among the whispering pines and howling wind. The land stretched endlessly around her, untamed, merciless, beautiful in a way that hurt to look at. It was the winter of 1872, a time when the frontier was still wild, and life was decided by the will to endure. The woman stumbled forward, her boots breaking through the snow crust. A sudden gust knocked her down, and when she hit the ground, the shock of cold stung through her body. She tried to rise, but her limbs refused. A sob escaped her throat, though no one could hear it over the roar of the storm. She lay still for a moment, her mind drifting between waking and dream. She thought she heard something. Distant hooves, faint at first, then clearer. Fear stirred in her chest. Were they coming back for her? The men who left her? Her pulse quickened. But no, the sound was different. Steady, rhythmic, calm amid the chaos. The cry of the wind shifted, and through the blur of snow she saw movement. A dark figure emerged, tall and silent, wrapped in furs and leather, his outline shaped by strength and stillness. At first she thought he was a ghost. The way he moved through the storm seemed unreal, as if he belonged to it. His horse was lean and restless, nostrils flaring in the freezing air. The man dismounted slowly, scanning the white horizon before turning toward her. His face was marked with the distinct paint of the Apache, his eyes sharp and steady like a hawk's. He said nothing as he knelt beside her, his hand brushing the snow from her cheek. She flinched at his touch, though it was warm, surprisingly warm against her frozen skin. He studied her for a long moment, his gaze unreadable. The woman tried to speak, but her lips could barely move. A single word escaped her, broken and quiet, asking for help. He didn't answer. Instead, he lifted her gently, wrapping her in a thick hide that smelled of smoke and pine resin. His strength startled her. It was as if she weighed nothing at all. She wanted to ask who he was, what he wanted, but her voice was gone. All she could do was let herself be carried through the white silence. The Apache warrior moved with purpose, each step sure even in the blinding snow. The woman's head rested against his shoulder, and she caught glimpses of his face, the stern jawline, the dark braids streaked with snow, the faint scar near his temple. There was no cruelty in his eyes, only quiet resolve. She felt herself slipping into unconsciousness again, but just before she did, she saw a faint glow ahead through the storm. A small campfire flickered beneath a rock ledge, its light like a heartbeat in the dark. The man laid her near it, feeding the flames with dry twigs and bark from his saddlebag. The fire crackled, its warmth slowly pushing back the deathly cold that had settled into her bones. The woman trembled uncontrollably, a sensation returned to her body. The Apache removed her frozen boots, rubbed her hands between his palms, and poured a small amount of water into her mouth from a canteen. She opened her eyes again and tried to speak. "Why are you helping me?" she whispered, her voice thin as smoke. He didn't look up. "Because the land would take you if I didn't." His words were simple, but they carried a weight she could feel. The firelight flickered across his face, revealing the deep lines etched by hardship and survival. He was not a young man, though his movements held the quiet power of someone who had fought many winters and lived to see their lessons. Outside, the storm howled and raged, but inside the small circle of firelight, time seemed to pause. She studied him carefully, the way he tended to the fire, the way he listened to the wind as though it spoke a language she couldn't understand. She wondered what brought him here. Few men traveled alone through such storms unless they had no choice. After a long silence, she found her courage. "Were you following me?" she asked, half afraid of the answer. He shook his head. "No one follows the lost," he said simply. "The land led me here." His words sounded strange, but something in them felt true. She wanted to ask more, but exhaustion weighed her down again. The warmth of the fire lulled her into a fragile peace, and before long her eyes closed. When she woke, it was dawn. The storm had passed, leaving behind a world carved in silver and ice. The Apache was sitting a few feet away, sharpening his knife against a flat stone. His horse grazed quietly on the sparse winter grass. She sat up slowly, the hide still wrapped around her, and for a moment she didn't know where she was. Then she saw the fire, the smoke rising soft against the pale sky, and it all came back. He glanced at her but said nothing. She realized he had built a small lean-to during the night, shielding her from the worst of the wind. He had also left some dried meat and a cup made from a hollowed horn beside her. She looked at it, then at him, unsure whether to trust him, but hunger won over fear. She ate slowly, still watching him. "You could have left me," she said finally. "I could have," he agreed, not looking up. "But I didn't." The simplicity of his answer unsettled her. People didn't help without reason, not out here. There was always something they wanted. Yet when she searched his face, she found no greed or expectation, only calm watchfulness. The sun climbed higher, and with it came the question neither of them had spoken. What now? The woman didn't know where she was or how far she had wandered from the trail. The Apache seemed to know the land well. He moved like a man who had spent his life reading the earth. She wanted to ask if he would take her back, help her find a settlement, but something held her back. Then far in the distance came a sound that froze them both, a low rolling thunder of hooves. He rose instantly, his knife sliding into its sheath, his eyes narrowing toward the horizon. She followed his gaze, heart pounding. Through the white haze of morning she saw them, riders moving fast, cutting through the snow like shadows. Her breath caught. She recognized their shapes, the men who had left her to die. The Apache turned to her, his voice low but steady. "They're coming for you," he said. The woman's pulse raced. "What will you do?" He looked toward the rising sun, his expression unreadable. "What must be done?" he replied. And as the first echo of gunfire cracked across the frozen valley, the fire between them flared brighter, its warmth and danger entwined. Two souls bound by the wild heart of the land, standing on the edge of something neither could yet name. The sound of the riders grew louder, breaking through the calm of the morning. The woman's hands trembled as she clutched the edge of the hide around her shoulders. The Apache warrior stood tall beside his horse, his eyes fixed on the horizon. The rising sun glinted off the snow, blinding her for a moment, and when she blinked the light away, she saw the shapes of men coming into view. There were 4 of them, maybe 5, moving fast, their rifles catching the light as they rode. Her breath came quick and shallow. The memories hit her like a hard wind. The last time she saw those men, they had turned their backs while she begged for mercy. They left her lying in the snow, saying she was too much trouble to keep alive. She had been nothing more than a burden to them, a woman without protection, slowing them down on their run from the law. The thought made her sick with anger and fear. The Apache turned toward her, his voice calm. "You stay low," he said. "They will not find you here." "But they will," she said, her voice cracking. "They're looking for me. I know it." He knelt, checking the straps on his saddle, then reached for his bow. "If they come close, I will make them turn back." he said, his tone steady, as though it was a simple truth. She stared at him, disbelief warring with gratitude. You'd risk your life for me? You don't even know who I am. He glanced at her, his dark eyes unreadable. The land gives us all the same breath, he said. If I let you die, the wind remembers. His words made her chest tighten. There was something in the way he spoke, a deep sense of honor she couldn't quite understand. She wanted to ask more, but the thunder of hooves drew closer, shaking the ground beneath them. He turned toward the sound again, slipping into the shadows near the rocks that bordered their small camp. The woman crouched behind the fire, her pulse hammering in her ears. The riders came into full view now, rough men with weathered faces and eyes sharp from too much killing. Their coats were worn, their boots caked in snow. She recognized their leader instantly. His thick beard was rimmed with frost, and his grin carried no warmth. He had been the one who gave the order to leave her behind. His name echoed in her mind like a curse. The men slowed their horses near the stream that cut through the valley below. They scanned the land carefully, searching for any sign of movement. The woman held her breath, afraid even the sound of it might give them away. The Apache didn't move, his bow drawn and ready, his body still as stone. The air between them was so tense it felt alive. One of the riders pointed toward the ridge, saying something she couldn't hear. The others nodded. They began to turn their horses, heading in the opposite direction. For a moment, relief washed over her. Maybe they hadn't seen the smoke from the fire. Maybe luck was on their side. But then one of the horses reared, snorting hard. The man riding it cursed, yanking the reins. His eyes caught a flicker of color, the edge of the Apache's hide tent against the snow. He shouted something, and the others spun around, rifles raised. The Apache moved in an instant. He loosed an arrow that struck the snow inches from the lead rider's boot. It wasn't a killing shot, but it sent a clear message. The men shouted, fumbling to aim their guns. Another arrow hissed through the air, splitting the strap of a rifle before the man could fire. The leader cursed and raised his hand. "We don't want trouble," he yelled, his voice carrying across the valley. The Apache didn't answer. His silence was more powerful than any words. The men hesitated, exchanging wary glances. They weren't used to being hunted, and something in his stance made them uneasy. He wasn't afraid, and men like them could smell fear. They waited a moment longer before pulling back, deciding the storm had taken enough out of them. The sound of hooves faded slowly into the distance. The woman exhaled shakily, her body trembling. When she looked up, the Apache was watching her. "They won't stop," he said quietly. "They will come again when the sun is higher." She nodded, her throat dry. "Then we should move." He didn't argue. Within minutes he had packed the few belongings from their camp and saddled his horse. He helped her climb up behind him, though she could barely lift her leg. The warmth of the horse's body was a small mercy against the cold. They rode in silence through the frozen forest, the snow crunching beneath the hooves. The woman looked around, taking in the land that seemed both cruel and alive. The trees stood tall and silent, their branches heavy with frost. She could hear the distant cry of a hawk echoing through the valley. It was a harsh beauty, wild and endless. As they rode, her thoughts drifted back to the night before, to the wagon, the shouting, the gunfire. They had been running from soldiers, she remembered now. The men who left her behind had stolen something, gold or maps, she wasn't sure. They said she was bad luck, that she slowed them down. She didn't even know what was real anymore. The Apache's voice broke the silence. "You came from the east," he said. It wasn't a question. She nodded. "From Kansas. We were headed for California." "Why?" "Because there was nothing left where I came from," she said softly. "The war took everything. My home, my family. I thought maybe the West would give me something back." He said nothing, but she could feel his attention shift toward her. "And you?" she asked after a while. "Why are you here alone?" He didn't answer for a long time. The only sound was the steady rhythm of the horse's breath. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. "The soldiers came to our village 3 winters ago. They said they came for peace, but peace does not come with fire. She felt the pain beneath his words and didn't press further. The silence between them wasn't empty. It carried the weight of all they had lost. Hours passed as they climbed higher into the hills. The land changed, the trees thinning out, replaced by rock and ice. By midday, they reached a narrow ridge overlooking a frozen river. From there, the world stretched wide and untamed, the snow sparkling under the weak sun. The Apache stopped and dismounted, scanning the valley below. He pointed toward a narrow path winding through the cliffs. "There is a place ahead," he said. "We can rest there before dark." They walked the rest of the way, the woman leaning on him for balance. When they reached the shelter of a rocky hollow, she sank down near the entrance, exhausted. He gathered dry branches and built another small fire, careful to keep the smoke low. As the flames grew, she studied him quietly. He moved with a kind of grace that came from years of surviving in a world that didn't forgive mistakes. His face was calm, but his eyes carried a shadow she couldn't name. Finally, she asked, "Why did they call you Apache warrior?" He looked at her, a faint flicker of memory crossing his face. "Because once I fought for my people," he said. "Now I fight for the land that still remembers them." She nodded slowly. "You saved me when you didn't have to. I don't know how to thank you." He fed another stick to the fire. "You don't need to," he said simply, "but you must be ready. The men who left you will not forget what they lost. They will follow." Her eyes widened. "What do you mean?" "They left you because they feared you would slow them down," he said, "but they also left something else behind, something they want back." She frowned, trying to remember. "I don't have anything." He reached into his pouch and pulled out a small leather bag. Inside, wrapped in cloth, was a piece of paper, creased and torn, but clearly important. "I found this near where you lay in the snow," he said. "It has the mark of the soldiers." She stared at it, realization dawning slowly. The map. She had seen one of the men hide it in her bag before they left the camp. It showed a route through Apache lands, a secret trail leading to gold hidden deep in the mountains. Her heart raced. "They think I still have it." He nodded. "And they will kill anyone who stands in their way." The fire crackled softly between them. Outside, the wind began to rise again, carrying the faint echo of distant hooves. The woman's hand tightened around the edge of the hide. The Apache's gaze hardened, his fingers brushing the handle of his knife. Neither spoke, but both understood what was coming. The storm had only paused. The real danger was still on its way. The fire burned low, its glow flickering against the stone walls of the hollow. The Apache sat silently across from her, his shadow stretching long and lean in the dim light. Outside, the wind moaned through the narrow canyon, carrying with it the faint promise of danger. The woman kept her hands close to the warmth, though her mind was far from calm. The map he had found still weighed heavy in her thoughts. That single piece of paper had the power to decide who lived and who didn't in this wild land. She stared into the flames, trying to remember every detail from that night. She saw flashes of faces, the men arguing over the gold, the sound of horses panicking, the gunshot that tore through the dark. She had been pushed, stumbled, and hit the frozen ground. When she woke, the wagons were gone. She had thought it was pure cruelty that they left her, but now she saw it differently. They hadn't just abandoned her. They had wanted her dead so the soldiers would never find the trail they were after. The Apache broke the silence. "You must tell me what they seek," he said quietly. She hesitated, then nodded. "Gold," she whispered. "They said it was hidden in the hills left from the war. They found a trail marked by someone who had been here before. I didn't care about it. I just wanted to reach California. But they said I'd seen too much." His eyes narrowed slightly. "Gold," he repeated as if the word itself was a curse. "That is why your kind come to this land. You dig the earth and call it fortune. But every mountain they cut bleeds." She looked down, ashamed though she had done nothing wrong. "I didn't want any part of it," she said. "I just wanted a chance to live." He studied her a moment longer, then nodded. The land may yet give you that chance. But we must move before dawn. They will come by then. She tried to rest, though sleep never came easy. Every sound in the night stirred her fear. The fire crackled softly, and she watched as he sat awake, listening to the wind. He seemed to hear things she could not. The distant cry of an owl, the faint crunch of snow beyond the ridge. His patience was like stone, carved by years of surviving what others could not. By morning, the storm had returned, sweeping through the valley with biting cold. They rode in silence, moving along the river's edge where the snow was thinner. The woman's body ached, but she didn't complain. The Apache rode ahead, scanning the land. He seemed to know every curve and hollow, every sound of the wilderness. After several hours, they came to a narrow pass where a frozen waterfall hung like glass. The air smelled faintly of pine and smoke. The Apache slowed his horse, raising a hand. The woman felt the tension ripple through him. "What is it?" she asked softly. "Smoke," he said. "Not from the storm." He dismounted and motioned for her to stay. She watched as he moved silently toward the ridge, his figure disappearing among the rocks. The minutes stretched long. When he returned, his face was grave. "There is a camp ahead," he said. "2 soldiers. They have been following tracks." Her heart jumped. "They're looking for me." He nodded once. "Maybe. Or the men who hunt you. It makes no difference. If they find us, they will not ask questions." She felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. "What do we do?" "We move through the forest," he said. "Stay low. The wind will hide our scent." They moved quickly, weaving between trees until the camp was far behind. The forest thickened, and for a while the world was nothing but the creak of leather and the soft crunch of snow underfoot. Yet even as they moved, she could feel eyes watching. Somewhere behind them, men were tracking their trail. As the day faded, they reached a wide plain dotted with old oak trees and a frozen creek running through its heart. He stopped there, letting the horse drink from the thin trickle of water beneath the ice. She climbed down, her legs trembling from exhaustion. "Rest a moment," he said. "Then we go west. There is shelter in the canyon." She nodded, grateful for even a brief pause. The air was heavy with quiet. She knelt by the creek, splashing a handful of icy water on her face. When she looked up, she saw him standing still, staring across the plain. His hand rested on his knife. "Someone follows," he said. Her breath caught. She turned, scanning the white horizon. At first she saw nothing. Then faintly a line of riders appeared far off, dark against the pale snow. There were more now, 6, maybe 7. The same men from before, joined by others. "They found us," she whispered. "They never lost you," he said. "They only waited." Panic rose in her chest, but his calm steadied her. He moved quickly, checking the sky. "The storm will turn again by nightfall," he said. "That will be our shield. That will be our—" They began to ride again, pushing hard across the open land. The cold stung her face and the wind howled against her ears. Every so often, she looked back and saw the riders still there, their dark shapes growing closer. As dusk fell, they reached the edge of a deep canyon. The land dropped sharply, revealing a maze of stone and ice below. The Apache dismounted and led the horse down a narrow path that wound between the rocks. The woman followed, clutching the reins tightly. The descent was slow and dangerous. The snow made every step uncertain. When they finally reached the bottom, the canyon opened into a sheltered hollow surrounded by towering cliffs. The Apache stopped there and began gathering dry brush for another fire. The woman sank down beside a rock, her body shaking from cold and fear. "They'll come here," she said. "You know they will." He nodded. "Yes. But this time, we are not the hunted." His tone sent a strange chill through her. She watched as he worked, setting small traps along the canyon wall, moving with quiet precision. He seemed to know exactly what was coming. As night fell, the snow began again, soft and thick. The fire glowed faintly, casting their shadows on the canyon walls. She finally spoke. "You could leave me here," she said. "Save yourself. You don't owe me anything." He looked at her, the firelight reflecting in his eyes. "You do not understand," he said. "The land remembers kindness, and it remembers betrayal. If I walk away now, I become no better than those who left you." She didn't know how to respond. There was something in his words that reached deep inside her. She realized that beneath his silence there was sorrow, something old and heavy. After a while, he asked quietly, "The man who led them, you knew him before?" She hesitated, then nodded. "He was with my husband's wagon. We joined them after the war when the railroad stopped paying. He promised safety, work, a new home. My husband believed him, but he died on the trail, and I had no choice but to keep going with them. When they found the map, they changed. Greed took over everything." The Apache listened without interrupting. "Greed burns faster than fire," he said finally, "and it leaves nothing but ash." The woman lowered her gaze, her thoughts heavy with memory. She had seen the truth of that before, the way people changed when they thought fortune was close enough to touch. The night deepened, and the storm grew louder. The wind roared through the canyon, masking the sound of approaching danger. But the Apache sensed it. He rose suddenly, his body tense. "They are here," he said. The woman stood, heart pounding. The firelight danced wildly as she peered into the dark. Through the curtain of snow, she saw faint movement at the edge of the cliffs, shadows shifting, men climbing down the path they had taken hours before. The Apache moved quickly, signaling her to stay low. He slipped behind the rocks, silent as a wolf. The woman crouched near the fire, gripping the edge of her cloak. Her breath came in shallow bursts. Then came the first echo of boots on stone. Voices carried faintly through the wind. The leader's voice rose above the rest, cold and certain. "She's here somewhere. Find her. The gold map's worth more than the girl." The woman's stomach twisted. The Apache had been right. They were after the map, not her life. She pressed her hand against the hidden pouch where it was kept. If they found it, blood would follow. The sound of metal scraping rock broke through the storm. A rifle cocked. The Apache's figure moved among the shadows, unseen but ready. The tension thickened until it felt like the air itself might snap. She waited, frozen between fear and faith. The fire hissed as snowflakes fell into it. The wind carried the faint smell of gunpowder, though no shot had yet been fired. The men spread through the canyon, their torches flickering like ghostly lights. The leader stepped forward, his boots crunching in the snow. "Come out," he shouted. "You can't run forever." His voice echoed off the walls, cruel and confident. The Apache's hand tightened around his knife. The woman's pulse raced as the fire's glow trembled. She could see his shadow poised in silence, waiting for the right moment. And then the wind shifted. The flames flickered wildly. The nearest rider turned his head and their eyes met. The first shot rang through the canyon, shattering the quiet night. The shot cracked through the canyon like thunder, echoing off the stone walls and scattering the snow that clung to the cliffs. The woman dropped to the ground instinctively, her hands covering her head as the fire burst in a spray of sparks. The Apache moved with lightning speed, vanishing into the shadows before the men could pinpoint his position. The horses below whinnied and stomped nervously, their riders shouting orders that were lost to the wind. The woman's pulse hammered in her ears. The smell of gunpowder mixed with smoke filled the air, and for a moment she couldn't tell where the danger was coming from. Another shot followed, then another. The flashes of rifles lit up the dark like small bursts of lightning. The Apache's bow twanged once, twice, and one of the men cried out in pain. "Spread out," the leader shouted. "Find the girl and kill the savage." His voice was sharp, familiar, dripping with the same arrogance she had heard when he left her to die. She pressed her back against the rock, her breath short and ragged. The map, the one reason they were all here, was tucked close to her chest beneath the hide. She thought of burning it, ending all this madness, but something inside her hesitated. Maybe it wasn't about gold anymore. Maybe it was about not letting them win again. The Apache reappeared beside her, crouched low. His eyes met hers for a split second, steady and focused. "Stay here," he whispered. "Do not move unless I say." Before she could answer, he was gone again, melting into the darkness like part of the canyon itself. She could hear the faint whistle of the wind over the cliffs, then the crunch of boots on stone growing closer. The men were fanning out, their torches cutting through the snow like glowing eyes. Her heart pounded as one of them stepped into view just a few feet away. He was tall, his beard heavy with frost, and his rifle aimed low. He moved slowly, his boots dragging in the snow, scanning every shadow. The firelight flickered across his face, and for a moment she saw the doubt in his eyes. The cold had begun to take its toll, but greed burned hotter than any storm. She held her breath. The man turned, stepping closer to the rock where she hid. He paused, listening. Then came the faint creak of leather above them, a sound so small it could have been mistaken for the wind. But it wasn't. The Apache dropped down from the ledge in complete silence, landing behind him. In one swift motion, he grabbed the man by the collar and pulled him into the dark, muffling the cry that followed. The woman closed her eyes, clutching the edge of her cloak. She didn't want to look, didn't want to see the fight that followed. When the sound stopped, the Apache returned, his expression unchanged. "They will not stop," he said quietly. "Not until they take what they came for." "What do we do?" she whispered. "We make them believe the land itself fights back," he said. He began to move quickly, scattering the firewood and covering the flames until only a dull glow remained. He gestured for her to follow. They moved deeper into the canyon, keeping low as the shouts of the riders echoed behind them. The snow was falling harder now, thick flakes swirling in the wind. It was a blizzard's beginning, and the Apache seemed to welcome it. They reached a narrow passage between two cliffs where the wind howled like a living thing. The woman stumbled, her feet numb, her breath forming small clouds. He stopped and steadied her. "You must keep walking," he said. "If you stop, the cold will take you before they do." She nodded, though her strength was fading fast. Behind them, the shouts grew louder. The men had found the fire, and now they were following the fresh trail. The Apache turned, his eyes narrowing. "They are close." They reached a bend in the canyon where the path widened, opening into a stretch of frozen river. He stopped there, scanning the land. The moon broke briefly through the clouds, lighting the ice with a silver glow. "Here," he said. "They will follow this way. We end it here." Her eyes widened. "You can't fight them all." He looked at her, calm as ever. "I do not fight for death," he said. "I fight for balance." Before she could speak again, he began preparing traps from his pack, thin wires, sharpened stakes hidden beneath snow, things she didn't even know he carried. Every motion was deliberate, precise. The snow thickened, swirling around him like smoke. The woman wanted to help but didn't know how. "They'll kill you," she said softly. He stopped for a moment and looked at her. "When the fire dies, the land grows cold," he said. "But when even one spark survives, the storm cannot win." She didn't fully understand his words, but they sank deep into her heart. Something about him, his strength, his quiet defiance, felt bigger than survival. It felt like a part of the land itself, something eternal and unbroken. The wind screamed through the canyon, carrying the distant sound of hoofbeats again. The men were coming fast now, their torches faint blurs through the snow. The Apache motioned for her to climb onto a ledge overlooking the frozen river. From there, she could see everything: the ice below, the dark shapes approaching, and the figure of the Apache standing tall against the storm. Her heart pounded so hard it hurt. The first of the riders burst through the snowdrift shouting. The leader was at the front, his rifle raised, his voice cutting through the wind. "You think you can hide from me? I'll take what's mine." The Apache didn't move. He stood in the center of the river, bow in hand, his breath steady. The torches glowed brighter as the riders drew closer. Then came the first snap of a trap. A horse stumbled, falling with a terrified cry. The men cursed, scattering, firing wildly into the dark. The woman covered her mouth to keep from crying out. She could see the Apache moving through the smoke and snow like a ghost, striking from the shadows. Each arrow found its mark, each motion precise. The canyon was chaos now, gunfire echoing, horses screaming, snow flying in all directions. The leader dismounted, shouting for the others to hold their ground. He fired into the shadows, his bullets sparking against stone. "You can't scare me, savage," he yelled. "You're one man against 6. The Apache stepped from behind a rock, calm and unflinching. "One man is enough," he said. The leader fired again, but the shot missed. The Apache's arrow flew faster, slicing through the air and striking the man's shoulder. He staggered back, cursing. Another rider rushed forward, but the ice beneath him cracked with a deep, thunderous sound. The horse reared and both plunged through into the freezing water below. The woman gasped, her hand flying to her chest. The river was breaking apart under the weight of the chaos. The Apache moved quickly, calling to her. "Climb higher," she obeyed, scrambling up the ledge as the snowstorm roared around them. Below, the remaining riders were trapped between fear and fury. The leader ripped the arrow from his shoulder, blood staining his coat. "I'll kill you myself," he roared, pulling a knife from his belt. He charged forward across the cracking ice. The Apache met him halfway, their shadows colliding in the storm. The woman could barely see them through the snow, but the sound of steel on steel carried through the wind. It was a brutal rhythm, strike, block, the scrape of metal, the grunts of men locked in struggle. The storm reached its height, a blinding white fury that swallowed everything. The woman could only hear them now, voices lost in the roar. Her hands clung to the cold stone, her heart beating in her throat. She wanted to scream for him to stop, to run, but her voice wouldn't come. Then came a sudden silence, sharp and hollow. The storm seemed to pause, as if the land itself was holding its breath. Through the snow, she saw 2 figures on the ice, one standing, one kneeling. The leader raised his knife again, his voice breaking through the wind. "This ends now." The Apache didn't move. His breath rose in slow clouds, his body steady, waiting. The woman's pulse raced, her entire body trembling. She knew something was about to happen, something final. The storm swirled around them, hiding the edges of the world. The fire of the Apache warrior burned bright even against the cold, and the land itself seemed to watch, waiting for the moment that would decide everything. The knife hung in the air, caught in the light of the moon as it broke through the storm. For a long heartbeat, the world seemed frozen. The wind stilled, the snow paused mid-fall, and the woman's breath caught in her throat. The Apache stood motionless, his eyes locked on the wounded man before him. Then, with one swift movement, he stepped aside. The ice beneath the leader's boots gave way, splitting open with a deep, shattering crack. The man's scream was swallowed by the wind as he plunged into the freezing water below. The canyon went quiet again, the sound of the river muffled beneath the snow. The Apache remained still for a moment, watching as the last ripples disappeared into the dark. His bow hung at his side, his shoulders heavy, his breath steady but tired. When he finally turned, his gaze found the woman on the ledge. Her hands trembled as she climbed down, her heart still racing. She reached him slowly, unsure if it was truly over. "Is it done?" she asked softly. He nodded. "The storm has taken what it wanted." She looked around. The other men were gone, some fled, others trapped beneath the broken ice. The torches had died out, leaving only the moonlight and the white silence of snow. She felt both relief and sorrow, like the weight of everything that had happened was finally pressing down on her. The Apache glanced at her hands, still clutching the hide where the map was hidden. "What you carry," he said quietly. "It brings death wherever it goes." She nodded, her throat tight. "I know." She untied the strap and pulled out the folded hide, staring at the faded lines that had caused so much bloodshed. Her father's promise of fortune, her brother's betrayal, the men who hunted her, all because of this. It felt meaningless now. She held it over the fire's dying glow, and the Apache watched in silence. The hide caught flame, curling at the edges before turning black. She watched until it was nothing but ash carried away by the wind. "It should never have existed," she said. He gave a slow nod. "Some things are not meant to be found." They stood there in silence for a long while. The snow began to ease, the wind calming to a soft whisper through the canyon. The woman shivered, the cold finally seeping through her bones. The Apache noticed and took his blanket, wrapping it around her shoulders without a word. "Where will you go now?" she asked. He looked toward the eastern horizon, where the first pale light of dawn touched the clouds. "There is a village beyond the ridge," he said. "You will be safe there." "And you?" His eyes drifted toward the mountains. "The land will need me still." Something in his voice carried both peace and loneliness, and she felt a pang of emotion she couldn't name. "You saved my life," she said softly. He shook his head. "You saved your own. I only showed the way." She smiled faintly, though her eyes glistened. "Then show me once more, just until we reach the ridge." He gave a small nod, and together they began the long walk through the canyon. The snow crunched beneath their feet, and the world around them seemed to wake slowly from a long sleep. The sun began to rise, painting the peaks in shades of gold and rose. The air was crisp but gentler now, and the danger felt distant, like the echo of a dream fading with the light. As they walked, she found herself thinking about everything that had happened. The chase, the fight, the fear that had followed her for so long. She had come to the canyon seeking safety, but found something deeper. The Apache had not only protected her, he had taught her that survival was not just about running, but about facing what you carry inside. By midday, they reached the ridge he had spoken of. From there, the land opened into a valley covered in pines and streams that shimmered under the sunlight. She could see smoke rising from a distant settlement, thin and gray against the sky. It looked peaceful, untouched by greed or violence. "This is where our paths divide," he said quietly. She turned to him, her hand still wrapped in the blanket he had given. "Will I ever see you again?" He didn't answer right away. His gaze traveled over the land as if he were reading something only he could understand. "If the wind carries your name, I will hear it," he said. A small smile touched her lips. "Then I'll whisper it to the wind." He gave a faint nod, then stepped back. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them was not empty. It was full of understanding, of everything that didn't need to be said. Then he turned, his figure blending with the rocks and trees as he made his way back into the wild. She stood there until he was gone, the quiet of the valley filling her ears. When she finally walked down toward the settlement, her steps were slow but steady. The sun was warm on her face, and though the past still lingered behind her, it no longer felt like a chain. The villagers welcomed her with curiosity and kindness. They gave her food, warmth, and a place to rest. For the first time in what felt like years, she slept without fear. When she woke, the fire was still burning softly, and the sound of children's laughter came from outside. It was simple, ordinary, and it felt like healing. Days turned into weeks. She began to help the people with small tasks, mending clothes, cooking, tending to the gardens that grew along the river. The work gave her peace, and the land seemed to breathe new life into her. Sometimes she would walk to the ridge at dusk, looking toward the mountains where she had last seen him. She never saw his figure again, but she always felt that he was near, watching in silence like the guardian he had always been. Seasons passed. The valley flourished, and with it, so did she. Her heart still carried the memories, the pain, the fear, the loss. But they no longer hurt in the same way. They had become part of her story, shaping who she was. One evening, when the sky was streaked with orange and gold, she stood by the river and looked at her reflection. For the first time, she didn't see a fugitive or a victim. She saw someone who had endured, someone who had found strength not through revenge or gold, but through forgiveness. The wind stirred softly through the trees, carrying a familiar sound, faint like a whisper. It reminded her of the Apache's voice, calm and strong. She smiled to herself and whispered back, "Thank you." Then she turned toward the village lights and walked home. The canyon, far away now, remained untouched. Snow still covered its ridges, and the river still ran beneath the ice. The scars of the battle faded with time, reclaimed by the land. Only the wind remembered what had happened there, the cries, the fire, the courage of two souls bound by fate. In the end, it wasn't about treasure or vengeance, it was about survival, redemption, and the quiet power of choosing peace when the world offers only violence. The Apache had shown her that even in the harshest wilderness, there was still room for mercy, and she carried that truth with her always like a flame that refused to die. The mountains stood tall under the starlit sky, silent witnesses to everything that had passed. Somewhere beyond their shadows, the Apache walked alone, his spirit one with the land. The woman, miles away, slept beneath a calm sky, her heart finally free. And though their paths had parted, they were bound forever by the storm that had changed them both. The wind moved gently across the valley, whispering through the pines, carrying with it the memory of courage, loss, and quiet redemption. The story of the Apache and the woman became part of the land itself, timeless, unspoken, but never forgotten.